All right, it's time now. Welcome back to our first webinar series of 2024. Today, we will be going over the best government website design trends and practices. It is Tuesday, January 23rd, 2024. Let's get started. Your host for today will be Creative Director Alex Parent, as well as myself, Marketing Specialist Kathleen McGee. And as always, some housekeeping. There will be a recorded version on the Revize site afterwards, as well as YouTube. So don't worry if you miss any information, you'll be able to go back and watch later. We do ask that you please hold all questions till the end for the designated question and answer time. And of course, we encourage you to follow us on social media to keep up with future webinars, blogs, case studies, trade shows, and much more. A little bit about us. We have been in the business for over 20 years, and we have an extremely diverse and experienced team of employees. We specialize in creating beautiful, accessible, and responsive government websites. We are headquartered in Troy, Michigan, but we do serve government agencies all across the U.S. I will now hand the presentation over to our creative director, Alex Parent, who will go over the 2024 web design trends. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks, Kathleen. Hey, everyone. As Kathleen said, I'm the creative director here at Revize. I've been with Revize for a little over 7 years now. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about some trends that we've seen kind of start to pop up at the end of 2023 going into the new year, and things that I anticipate seeing more and more on, not just high-level award-winning designs, but kind of even more standard designs across the board. While we're looking at these things, a couple things to consider. Not every design you see is going to have all of these trends at once. That would be a little bit overloaded most of the time. And another couple things to keep in mind, while some of these trends are kind of on the nose, really specific, some of them are kind of more along the lines of inspiration for things you can do, which kind of leads us into our first topic of the new trends, and that being color and texture. So every year we have the color of the year chosen. And so this year we have the Pantone color of the year, Peach Fuzz. When I was talking to Kathleen earlier today, I said that this color is kind of muted, but it's also in a weird way kind of really intense. So while this might be really useful for like a background color or something like that, it's still, even though it's a muted color, can be a little overwhelming. And I don't expect to see this color popping up on every single design. That being said, I think there's some validity to the feel of this color. And I could definitely see colors of other shades being inspired by, the muted nature of this kind of orangish yellow color. So I expect to not necessarily see this color on every design, but a lot of blues, greens, purples, those kinds of colors that kind of have a more muted feel to it. It's a warm, welcoming kind of feel that I think has a lot of flexibility across any type of branding you might see. Beyond color, a big thing that we're starting to see more and more of, over the last 4 to 5 years, flat design has been the thing. Every background is solid. It's one color. We haven't been seeing a lot of gradients or shadows or anything like that. We are definitely entering a phase of kind of a response to flat design over the last several years. And we're starting to see a lot more use of shadows, gradients, and my personal favorite, which you can see in the example here, background blurs, which essentially is kind of along the same lines as shadows and gradients and things. And essentially what background blurs do are they allow things like an overlay to look more like a window than something that's just kind of overlaid across the top. You can go ahead and go into typography. So the next trend we're going to talk about is typography. Obviously, we kind of see the back and forth of sans serif versus serif throughout the years. But one thing that I think has been emerging a lot recently is typography as your graphics. And this will lead into a couple other things as we talk about other trends. But the biggest thing here to take away is that not every brand, not every website has incredible graphics to work with, whether you're short on photography or you're not selling a product. So you don't want to fill your website with a bunch of stock photos. Typography can be used as kind of a graphic element to fill the frame. As we see in the example here, this is kind of the hero section of a website. And the entire frame is filled by text. So an interesting kind of choice to use when you don't necessarily have other graphics available, or especially if the branding isn't quite there. Moving on, again, as I mentioned, we're seeing a lot more use of typography for hero sections as opposed to things like the giant picture or video at the top of the screen. I expect to see, as we continue down this trend, less and less sites having that standard hero section. And when I say hero section, I mean the top of your website, the first thing you see when you land on the page. I think we're going to start to see a lot less of the standard, just a big image carousel or a video playing. I think a lot of users in this day and age are so used to seeing that they kind of just check out immediately when you do see it. And that content is completely ignored. So removing the hero picture or video and combining that with large or interesting text treatments can really take you in a much more engaging direction than just a picture can. The next thing we're looking at this year are motion and interaction. I think more than ever, we're seeing a lot more use of subtlety in this area. Motion has been very popular for years with video and things like that, but I think we're going to start to see a lot more motion background type things that aren't necessarily video. They're not specific to a piece of content, but something that just makes the background move a little bit, keeps the users engaged a little bit more than just a flat color or a gradient or something like that. And then moving on to the next couple things, parallax scrolling has become very popular. In the example on the right here, the way that a lot of websites are using parallax scrolling these days are to kind of have one piece of content stick to the screen as you scroll, while another piece of content, in this example, an image, kind of slides by the text. So it gives kind of the illusion of motion as you're scrolling through a site instead of having everything kind of just scroll all together. Beyond that, and kind of in the same vein, are micro interactions, and this could be something as subtle as how a button looks when you hover over it, we're seeing a lot of mouse interactions. So, in a hero section, maybe there's like a shape or something that follows your mouse around as you're moving across the site. In the example on the right here, when you hover over a specific word on the hero image, that kind of arrow shape in the background will actually change to represent the word that you're hovering over. So in the event that there's something a little bit more specific for your content, that can definitely be an option. The next thing we're going to talk about is better menus. Over the years, we've seen a lot of subtle changes to menu design. And by menu design, I'm talking about the drop-down menus, the things that happen when you hover over the main navigation. In the past, we've seen really simple, just the standard drop-down list that's just a column. And when you hover over that, another thing pops out. The next evolution of that was the mega menu, but now we're starting to see a much more interface-like approach to menu design. So things that can kind of make your menu design stand out and feel a bit more complete instead of just a list of menu options. In the example here, each option has an icon next to it and things like that. And then beyond that, looking at the navigation design as a whole, we're starting to see a lot less blocky, large navigations across the entire site. We're starting to see navigations that are much more compact and almost more app-like in a sense. I think it's kind of a natural response to our common use of apps on our phone where the menu is kind of tight and compact either in the top or bottom of the screen. And the biggest thing to take away from these smaller navigation bars is it gives so much more room for your content. You're not necessarily reducing usability or anything like that, but getting rid of that giant block at the top of your screen can definitely let your content speak a little bit louder without losing usability. Next, we have layout trends. So there's some really interesting things kind of happening here. And the biggest thing with layout trends is kind of the combination of everything we've talked about already. So the first big trend that we kind of saw really starting to crop up over the last couple of years are bento boxes, as they're kind of lovingly called in the design community. Basically just these grids of content that you can kind of organize in a unique way. Apple kind of was one of the first to really push this, but now it seems like just about everyone is doing it. Again, you could make all these pieces of content into a simple bullet point list, or you could do a bento box layout and have a bunch of graphics and interactions and things like that involved in each piece of content. It basically just takes a list and makes it much more visual and interactive than just a bullet point list. Another big thing we've continued to see over the last few years, and this is kind of a result of mobile first design, but I think it's being pushed beyond that now. And it's really taking advantage of really large screen real estate on desktop. Again, obviously on mobile designs, everything is full screen, but we're starting to see more and more websites take advantage of people using a giant 28-inch screen or something like that and really being able to show off their content. So maybe it's something as obvious as the example on the right, where you can just have a giant photo across the whole page. But it can also make a website that doesn't have a ton of content feel kind of larger than life. Instead of having just white space everywhere, you can allow textures or shapes, or again, motion backgrounds or something like that to kind of fill the screen, and really give it more of an interactive and interesting view. And finally, to tie it all together, storytelling has been kind of the big talking point of designs and layouts for years now. But I think now that we have kind of a lot of tools at our disposal with all the different interactions and things like that, telling a story is a bit more interesting than in the past. And it doesn't necessarily mean that top to bottom across your site, you have to physically tell a story with a beginning, middle, and end. But really, it's more about the journey. And if your design layout can allow users to kind of feel like they're on a journey from top to bottom of the site, that scrolling that is inevitable on every site nowadays can feel a lot less mundane and engage the user in a much more unique way. The final thing we have, and I think that this is out of order somehow, not a big deal. So this is actually going back to color and texture and kind of an offshoot of the whole blurred background idea, is skeuomorphism. So skeuomorphism, the first example I think of is like the original iPhone, when every app felt like it was a real thing. You had the books app that was like pictures of your book on a bookshelf, and every app kind of had these different real textures. I think there was like a pool or a billiards app game that, it didn't look like a standard game of today. It looked like a photograph of a pool table. I don't necessarily think that we'll ever get back to something quite as literal as that. Mainly because it tends to even in today's practices look very dated. But the term that I've seen coined recently is neumorphism. And it's kind of this combination of everything that we've looked at with the different, shadows and blurs and things like that, to make things feel a bit more tactile on the screen without actually being photographic references. And I believe that should be the final slide. Yep. So thanks for listening, everyone. Does anyone have questions about any of these subjects?
Yeah, thank you, Alex. That was a very insightful presentation, and I learned a lot from that. So that was excellent. Thank you so much.
Sure.
So yeah, if anybody has any questions right now, feel free to type them in the question and answer chat, and we can answer them to the best of our ability. If not, then we can go ahead and wrap it up, and you can ask us questions at any time or send an email. This QR code right here, actually, if you scan it from your screen, is a link to our social media channels. If you want to follow us or reach out in any way, it's right here at your screen. So feel free to indulge in that and ask questions if you have any. And thank you so much for tuning in and participating. All right, well, it doesn't look like we have any questions at this time. So thank you all again, and we'll wrap this up and it will be posted live for you to review. And don't hesitate to reach out and ask any questions at any time. And thank you so much. Thank you, Alex.
Yep. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.